What to do when you feel intimidated. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm Rick from thrivingnow.com, and I'm here with Kathy Bartuli from theintimacydojo.com.
Hey everyone.
Yay. Um, we are we're delighted that you're here. This is such an important subject. We see that there are hundreds of people from around the world, and what's interesting is that the definition of intimidated, Kathy, comes from uh, Latin. It's got its roots in that. It's been around for a long time. Intimidated means to be made timid, filled with fear, to be overawed or cowed, as through force of personality or by superior display of wealth, talent, etc. To be forced into or deterred from some action by induced fear. That's a big deal.
It is.
What would
It can. It
It's been
can.
your experience?
Well, part of it is, and one of the things we want to talk a little more deeply about is sometimes people aren't meaning to intimidate us. There can be intimidation, can be the intentional behavior that causes an average person to fear, for being confident or fear for moving forward. But there's also, and this is something that I run into a lot, I project onto people. Humans do this sometimes. And sometimes if someone wrote in and they said if someone has more money than them, they feel intimidated by them. And that it's really interesting. The power dynamics can be very perceptual. So I could be very comfortable with someone having more money than me, and it's true. If someone's very, very conventionally pretty, I sometimes feel intimidated. I feel like they're judging me or looking down on me and like wondering what I'm doing. So we all have our own dynamics. And I've actually seen this and I've talked to people that like, this person really intimidates me. They're kind of like cold or very powerful and they're looking down on me. And the other person says the exact same thing. And I'm like, you guys need to talk. Like,
There's something going on here inside of you that is kind of a
right.
strange dynamic.
So I think sometimes when there's two aspects of this. One, the other person could be genuinely trying to like, I'm more important and bigger and you better do what I say.
Right.
And it could also be that this person reminds you of someone, or there's an aspect of them that you have fears around, that they're just being kind in themselves. I've been told by people that they found me intimidating, and I'm like, really, me? Like I think I'm one of the kindest, gentlest people, and that's one of the things I try to be. But I get that maybe somebody's intimidated by me, and that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that's their perception of me.
Yes. And I've been told the same thing. I've been intimidating to people
And I think
across
you're
a
so
wide
gentle and
spectrum.
warm and appreciative. Like, I love spending time with you. I've never felt intimidated.
I get that because I don't think I hit your intimidation triggers.
Right. It
And we
doesn't mean
know
those
each
other
other and
people are
we've
wrong or
established
I'm
a
right.
level of
It's
trust
just,
and rapport.
yeah.
I wanted to 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 amplify what you said. There are definitely people, I'm sure you've run into them personally and professionally, that want you to feel less than
Mm-hmm.
because they intentionally, or in just the way that their personality is, very overbearing, that they take the power and they like the power differential. They like to have
Mm-hmm.
where they have power over the people that
Yes.
work for them or that are interested in being in their sphere of influence. So
Yeah.
that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely people that do that. Sometimes they don't do it in some areas, but you get them out on the golf course or at a bar or something, and all of a sudden a certain personality
And
shows
I
up.
do think it's a coping mechanism. I notice when I'm feeling most insecure, when I'm really depleted, if I'm feeling really less than, I'll kind of notice I'm bragging about things I've done. I tend not to. I'll establish credibility for people, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I did that thing, and kind of like a little bit of braggy, trying to gain power. I think a lot of people that try to intimidate are actually super insecure.
Yes, I think that that's an aspect where people use their position and their dominance to do that, but it's not all people. There are
No,
people that really are a very very dominant energy. They take the space, all the space, and then they kind of push others out. And
Very competitively.
yeah, and then there's just this awareness. Just we have a primal awareness. I saw a study where before we even introduce ourselves, before even a few seconds have passed, that the primitive part of our brain that is very aware of status has already rushed to instant judgment about where we sit in the hierarchy related to this person. And it makes very primal decisions. It can make them based upon size, wealth, beauty, intelligence, how other people are treating them. So you could have somebody that doesn't fit any of the normal categories, but if everyone else is looking up to them, all of a sudden, yeah.
So one thing I'd like to point out, and we have the self-care, self-love course, because how you treat yourself is a big part of your status indicator. Like if you treat yourself badly, if you dismiss your needs and the way, you don't look out for your own care, that signals to other people that you're less than. You think you're less than.
So we're laying out some of the landscape here so that we can have first some awareness of the external world, that there are people that like to be intimidating and to have power over through their status and do a lot to enhance that status, things that are the things that are viewed as being status, gold watches, cars, homes, a lot of things like that.
Pretty girlfriend, whatever.
Yeah, perfect makeup.
Whatever, or pretty.
And yeah, so there's that. And then there's our own internal experience. And I think that we want to touch on some of the boundary things around people that want to have power over us and how we can be in relationship or relating with people that are like that. But I'd also like, because we're emotional tools, I think one of the sweetest things that I've noticed in my life is that if I take situations where I'm reacting, intimidated, when there's actually not a lot of energy of being someone intimidating me. A simple example is that I have reasons in my past for bigger men who are bigger than me, making me feel uncomfortable. I've had men bully me. I've had men take advantage of me sexually when I was a teenager. There's a variety of things that, like, in my primitive brain, a man who's bigger than me, I feel it. And there's some men in my life who are just the sweetest, kindest, wouldn't hurt anyone. They have great boundaries. And so what I'm doing is, like, when I hug that person, and I even remember hugging that person, I can feel the discord in my body as a sensation. And I'm actively seeking, before I get together with him and after, to do tapping to help calm my reaction. And this has made an enormous difference in how I relate to him as well as other men. This has been an ongoing journey for me. And I know that from reading the comments that a lot of people have, especially with larger men who just by their physical presence will trigger that part of our brain. But also a lot of bigger men also throw their weight around more. They are used to being looked up to, literally.
Yeah, I think that we train people how to treat us, and it's hard when we have a lot of patterns. I went to the University of Florida to get my PhD, and the football players were so looked up to, and I think they just got so much adoration that whether they meant to or not, whether they might be normally humble people, they would just walk across the street and not even look to see if cars were coming because they expected people to stop. They expected people to buy them beers if they were at the bar. It was just, we're trained how to expect other people to treat us. And I think that it would be very hard to be humble if you were constantly getting that feedback. If you didn't have a couple of good friends that were like, dude, douchebag, don't do that. We have to have people that are going to be honest with us and real. But I think that, people that are conventionally pretty or handsome, people that are bigger and meet our stereotypical view of power, they do get that. They do get that kind of like entitlement of course, people are going to look at me. I even got it. I lived in mainland China for a year. And at the time I was not quite as big, but I was plump and I had really curly blonde hair. And apparently that was very attractive. So people who are plumper, it symbolized wealth to a country in 1988. It was the people didn't have enough food. So if you were plump, you were very wealthy and desirable, and pale skin symbolized that you hadn't had to work in the fields. So I had a lot of people looking at me and wanting to spend time with me. And I noticed that I got, like, when I went back to the States, I was like, why is no one looking at me? I'm just average here. And there was that kind of energy that was constantly coming. But one of the things I noticed that, and I think this is true for people, we can use intimidation, or if we're maybe not trying to intimidate, but a little put some distance. I had so many people wanting attention from me, I would get a little bit more, I wanted more distance. And I think that on either side of this, whether we're intimidated or intimidate, or there can be a way. It can be a way to be powerful and have control over people, but it can also be a way to block intimacy.
Yes.
So if I'm establishing myself as more or less than, I'm never meeting equally. I'm never actually being with this person. And I think that there's lots of ways, if we want to feel better than, if we look at the whole spectrum of people, like, I have this beautiful painting, you don't, I'm better than, and I'm just using that as an example. I love my painting, but, Rick is a male that's very good technically. He could feel like we can always find something to feel better than, and there's always something we can find less than. Because if we look at all the aspects of humanity, we're never going to be the top dog in all of them, except in maybe rare occasions with a small group. And maybe the other people are small children or something. I don't know.
So our subject tonight, what to do when we feel intimidated. This has been the landscape setting, and now I'd like to invite us to imagine someone that we have some intimidation, but I'd like, if you have someone in mind that everyone feels is intimidating and they seem to like it, think about somebody else. Someone who, or in your work world, in any kind of context where you're going to likely run into them, where if you have such a person that you feel some intimidation, you feel some sense of less than. Because one of the first things that we can do is start off with the people that aren't actually triggering or terrified, oh my God, this person's going to eat me, or abuse me, or threaten me, or take my job away from me. The people that really trigger the deepest fears, you can apply this same approach to, but I find that building up a sense of yourself first about how you can shift these feelings. So picking someone that's like, oh yeah, I get kind of uncomfortable, or I start behaving like a little, a little person. I start feeling like I need to brag, or that I just have to start being over deferential.
I think that, it links back to, there's some people that talk about, we've always talked about fight, flight, freeze. There's someone that says fawn is one of those. So if we can't run, we can't fight, we can't run away, before we freeze, we might try to please and aren't I good enough to be with you? Don't kick me to the curb. And I do think there's an aspect of that, like the dog turning over and showing his tummy, saying, please don't kick me. And I don't like it when I do that. I don't like it when someone's meaning to intimidate, or when they don't mean to intimidate. Both times annoy the heck out of me. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I think my primitive brain is saying, this is the only way you know to be safe. Right. When I was little, that was true. That was probably true. As an adult, it doesn't serve me very well.
So thank you for bringing in the fawn reflex. We can do a little bit of flight where we move away, we don't engage, we don't allow intimacy. We can also like fawn, like becoming differential. So what is it for you? Put a person's name down if you have a little place to write that, and notice then what is your reaction. Do you try to puff yourself up maybe to be on their level? Do you become deferential? Do you move away? What happens with this particular person? Maybe close your eyes for a moment and even let yourself feel a little ungrounded. Like, okay, what happens? Like my shoulders start scrunching in. It's like,
Yeah.
and there's a sense of like deferential. I don't want this person to feel challenged by me. Okay. So there's that. And notice the sensations in your body.
Yes.
So there's a contraction in my shoulders, but what happens in your throat? Do you feel ease in your throat, or does it become broken? Notice in your gut, in your body. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just noticed I try several different things. Like I'll kind of be a little erratic. Like, look, I did this good thing. Oh, you're so wonderful. Oh, I'll be a little quiet now and hope they come after me. Oh, why aren't you talking to me? Like this is for someone I'm not super intimidated by, but but my behavior, it's like I don't enjoy how I feel. It feels like I'm looking for a way to win their approval. And that's a sign I'm okay.
Where do you feel
if I have their approval?
The behavior is trying to win their approval, but where do you notice that in your body?
In my throat and my chest, and I definitely my shoulders, and it feels like I'm like trying to find a way in with them, even if they may not be in a space where they want me to be in, or they don't want to give approval. I'm just like trying to how about this? If I'm like this, and I'm not just being with myself and being who I want to be. I'm trying to be what I think they want me to be.
Great.
And it's not very nice.
Dottie said instant dislike. Where do you feel that in your body? And again, we can have great intuition of instant dislike for someone, but again, I'm wanting you to choose someone that you actually might want to be relating to. Maybe not necessarily in a relationship with, but there's someone in your world that you'd like to be able to just relax and chill about it and not feel this intimidation energy. Like go to a different, more neutral place.
Dottie is saying jaw, throat, stomach gets tight.
So we use an emotional technique for bringing some ease to your energy system. It's called EFT Tapping. You can learn about it at thrivingnow.com/tapping if you don't know it already. We're not going to go into the nitty gritty, but you can kind of follow along and see what we're doing. We're going to be tapping on acupoints that are used to send a signal into your energy system, your body, and comfort it as you tune into a particular sensation, like this person, what they look like, and how your body responds.
And I think the most powerful thing, and I like to remind everyone, people that already know this, but our primitive brain learned how to survive when we were small, powerless beings. We were little kids running around going, this world is very strange. What do all these people want? And when we're little kids, there is an expectation a lot of times that we will act in a more accommodating way.
Yes.
Children should not be, should be seen, not heard. And we're kind of trained into that. Realize that as adults, the mechanisms that we learn to survive and get approval, we may still be going back to them. Our survival brain is not very smart, but it learned what worked, and it's holding on to those things because it knows that in the past that's gotten us forward. But that kind of behavior, if I go to my boss at my corporate job and I start acting like a 3-year-old that's trying to please their parent, that's not going to get me very far. They want someone who's confident and steady. And I don't want to really date someone who wants a 3-year-old appeasing energy coming towards them. I want someone who wants to be with an adult who's, may have pluses and minuses and days on positive or secure and insecure, but like someone who I'm going to meet as an equal, not as this.
So let's do some tapping. We've churned up a lot of things. Would you like to lead us in just some basic tapping on this reaction that we have, whatever it is?
Yeah. So take a nice, slow, deep breath. And see if you can feel your feet on the floor or wherever they're resting. Just notice that they're supported by the universe. You're not having to hold yourself up. If you're sitting down, your butt's held by this chair you're in. And then see if you can tune into that feeling of like whether your chest, your throat, everything seems to shrink in on itself or get tight. Just be with that feeling while you feel grounded if you can. Often feelings pass amazingly quickly if we can just be with them for a minute. So take another slow, deep breath. Karate chop. Even though I'm feeling these horrible feelings.
Even though I'm feeling these horrible feelings.
My body is really reacting.
My body is really reacting.
And it's so embarrassing.
And it is so embarrassing.
I don't mean to act this way.
I do not mean to act this way.
It just seems to happen.
It just seems to happen.
And here it is again.
Here it is again.
I'm groveling.
I'm groveling.
I'm making myself small.
I'm making myself small.
I feel intimidated.
I feel intimidated.
And that kind of pisses
me off.
You know, if he means to intimidate me, I don't want to be intimidated.
I don't want to be intimidated.
And if they're not trying to intimidate me,
and they don't care,
why am I acting like
a wimp?
Maybe they're just trying to be confident around me.
Maybe that's just
who they are. I don't want to be intimidated
I don't want to be intimidated anymore.
All these feelings in my body. Eyebrow, this shrinking feeling. Side of the eye, this tension. Under the eye, it does not
feel good.
Under the nose, I feel less
than.
Chin, I feel small. Collarbone, this is an old tribal status thing.
This is definitely an old tribal status thing.
Under the arm, I don't have a king.
I do not have a king.
Top of the head, well, maybe if I live in England.
It doesn't even matter there.
Eyebrow, maybe I don't have to grovel anymore. Side of the eye, hey, primitive brain. Under the eye, I know we learned this pattern. Under the nose, and it did help for a long time.
Helped for millennia.
Chin, it's not so helpful anymore.
It is so not helpful.
Collarbone, it might be okay to change this around. Under the arm, and let go of some of this fear and tension. Top of the head, and just relate to people as equals. Nice deep breath.
Great.
Just notice what you're feeling. Yeah. Stuff might be coming up. We'd love to see in the comments if you want to share.
We have comments off to the side if you're watching this live. Check in again, that person that you had in mind, and see whether the sensations have changed. Kathy touched on being pissed off. How do you feel about it? Maybe it doesn't feel safe to be pissed off, and you're like even more wanting to withdraw. Could be that you're starting to move in the direction of feeling like an equal. And to me, an equal is, look, I have an energy system, you have an energy system, and we're engaging. And as humans, we can do that and let go on that level of all the noise. And as soon as you said that, like, part of me was like, oh, they don't want me to treat them as an equal. They want to be superior. I'd like to do a tapping round on that. Can we do that?
Are you leading it or you want me to? Yeah, I'd love that, because we're making an assumption. We don't actually know that when we think that.
Cry chop. Even though I would love to feel like an equal in this situation.
Even though I would love to feel like an equal in this
situation. A part of me doesn't think they want to be an equal.
A part of me does not think they want to be an equal.
They might even find that threatening.
They might even find that threatening or presumptuous.
Yeah. And I accept myself and all of my feelings about this.
And I accept myself and all of my feelings about
Top of it.
this.
I feel intimidated.
I feel intimidated.
How do they feel about that?
How do they feel
I
about
know
that?
some people like it.
I know some people like it.
What about this person?
What about this person?
Under the nose. They may think it presumptuous of me.
They may think it's presumptuous
To
of
treat
me.
them like an equal.
To treat them like an equal.
But they sort of are.
But they sort of are.
Under the arm. I invite my primitive brain to let go of the intimidation.
I'll invite my primitive brain to let go of the intimidation.
I'm letting go of the internal intimidation.
I'm letting go of the internal intimidation.
I can be aware of the markers of status too.
I can be aware of the markers of status
They're
too.
there. It's a thing.
They're there.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
So that's a little.
Can we do a little tapping on? Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that that's a little bit of the tricky way that I do it is like, well, it's a thing, status, it's a thing. It's sort of my intention with my tapping is to take the charge, the primal charge that leads to intimidation rather than, oh, okay, this status thing, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And I can be in that in the same way that I can be in a rainstorm or a bright sun. It's just a thing. That's the goal for me, is that kind of place where, yeah, the status stuff is like costumes. And we as humans I am taking the posture that I accept you as a human that is in the circle of humanity. That's my posture. So Kathy, you were gonna, you had picked up on something.
I was gonna say, I would love to. One thing that came up for me was like, who am I to be equal to them? And I was wondering if you could just do a little tapping on that, because I think that can come up, like, especially if we've been taught that we've been around people and like Jean sharing and finding people only want to talk about themselves. They don't want to hear everything I want to say. Like, if we're getting a lot of feedback that we're less than, it can, especially if we've had abuse or trauma as a child or as an adult, it can be really easy to think it's safer to be small. And that protective mechanism is like, who am I to be big? Who am I to be equal to other people? And I'd just like to do a tapping round on that.
Let's go for it.
So take a nice slow deep breath. Karate chop. Even though I'd like to meet them as an equal.
Even though I'd like to meet them as an equal.
I think they have it all together.
I think they have it all together.
And
I don't. I know I don't.
So who am I to meet them as an equal?
So who am I to meet them as an equal?
Who am I to be confident with them?
Who am I to be confident with them?
Who am I to feel okay?
Who am I to feel okay?
Top of the head. It would be nice to feel equal to this person.
It would feel nice to be equal to this person.
Eyebrow, it'd be nice to feel confident.
It would really be nice to feel confident.
Side of the eye, but who am I?
But who am I?
Under the eye,
I have doubts.
Under the nose, I have insecurities.
I have insecurities.
Chin, maybe this person does too.
Maybe this person does too.
Collarbone, maybe I've been comparing my insides to their outsides.
Maybe I've been comparing my insides to their outsides.
Under the arm, humans are kind of messy on the inside.
Humans are kind of messy on the inside.
Top of the head, maybe it's okay to feel confident and okay.
Maybe it's okay to feel confident and okay.
I think, Jean, I think some people are not feeling seen and heard out in the world. And sometimes if we spend time with them over time, they want to know more. But some people are just not, they're depleted and they don't know how to fill themselves up. So they're going to constantly pull. And that's like, I'm like, okay, you may not even be a movie buddy. Like, maybe it's great to say hello to them sometimes, but I'm not going to have them as a close friend for sure. And there's people that really genuinely want to know what's up with me, and I genuinely want to know what's up with them. And those are people I let in. And honestly, there are some people that I'm like, you're not very interesting. You're watching Seinfeld reruns all the time and worrying which ones come up next. I don't want to listen to you. So I'm one of those people that doesn't want to hear about their lives. And they're very enthralled with it. So we're not a good match. And that's okay. If Rick talked about, I don't know, knitting all the time or programming, that was the only thing he talked about, we wouldn't have much to talk about. It wouldn't be a good match. But as it is, we've never run out of things to say.
And going back to the intimidation, I think part of this is sort of like the advanced edge of it. If we feel intimidated in just speaking our truth, saying, hey, I just want to stop you for a second. Can we stop for a second? I'm noticing that, you've talked pretty straight for about 10 minutes, and it doesn't seem like there's any room for, reciprocity or sharing as equals. Is that what you need right now to really be seen and heard, or are you in a space where we could share and both be seen and both be heard? That's a level of like intimidation that can be like we don't know how they're going to respond, and
they might feel intimidated by you suggesting that.
So you can tap on that. We can even just do a round here on, I don't know how they're going to respond to me.
I don't know how they're going to respond to me.
What if I treat them from a place of my own power?
What if I treat them from a place of my own power?
I'm not trying to have power over them.
I'm not trying to have power over them.
Or power under them.
Or power under them.
Either power with or let's go our separate ways.
Or either power with or let's go our separate ways.
I don't know how they're going to respond.
I don't know how.
Part of me starts feeling very, and just tune into your body. If you imagine just speaking to someone as human to human from your truth, and you don't know how they're going to respond, there's a part of me that goes, wah! Yeah. Yeah. That I don't know how they're going to respond feeling in my body.
I don't know how they're going to respond feeling in my body.
And I sort of get intimidated by that.
And I definitely can get intimidated by that.
Especially when you look at the definition of intimidated, like deferred from some action by induced fear. We don't know how someone's going to respond. We can defer being clear, saying no, or just walking away. That's a thing.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed, I grew up, we were all very intimidated by my father. He was a very powerful person, and he had very strong opinions, and he could make your life pretty miserable if he didn't. But if he approved of you, things were quite easier than if he didn't. And I still remember my stepmother had moved into the house, and my dad was, kind of snarking at me and my sister. We were 14 and 13. And she turned around and he said something that would have made my mother cringe and cry. And we were like, eh. And she just looked at him. She goes, Pat, don't be ridiculous. And she kind of just chuckled and it didn't bother her at all. And he was like, oh. And we were waiting for the sky to fall. We were like, oh my God. And he was like, oh, okay. And he was fine. Like he needed someone that didn't respond to that intimidation. And I have found it doesn't always work. And I'm not saying everyone should just challenge everybody and laugh at them, but I found often enough that it really gets my attention that if someone tries to be intimidating and you just go like, don't be ridiculous, they're like, oh, okay. And they're just like, you called their bluff and they're like, oh, and he was with my stepmom. He was a teddy bear. Like my dad would do anything for that woman. And she never manipulated him. She'd just look at him and go, don't be ridiculous. Of course the girls aren't going to do that. Or of course we're not going to do that. And he'd be like, oh, okay. And we'd had 14 years of like, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I really do think that there's times we give in when someone is trying to be intimidating, that if we just go, you're being ridiculous, of course I'm not gonna like do that for you, or of course, of course I'm gonna do my job and not pretend that you did it.
Yeah.
Like, no. And it helps when we have security and support from people around us to do that.
That last part, thank you for adding that, because I sense that people are starting to imagine that the threatening people that are actually in their world.
And there are some people that if you told them don't be ridiculous, they would take you down.
Yeah. How do you not be intimidated by such a person? Is there a place that you can stand that's not intimidated with all of the stresses and strains that does on our internal world?
Well, I think that first it's important to look at it as objectively as you can. And if you're having trouble with it, getting a coach or therapist or someone who can look at it rationally with you. Your boss actually, like a boss actually has a lot of power. My dad had a lot of power. We were 14 and 13. Right. He could make our lives really miserable. He could have pulled us out of band and the things we loved. My stepmom was much more his equal. We couldn't have said, you're being ridiculous. She could. Yeah. But there was people I found that I can do that with as an adult, that it makes a big difference. So actually looking, is there a power differential? Does that person have the ability to make your life really miserable? And most employees now will recognize that. And if you go to HR or his manager or her managers and say, hey, I feel like this is a hostile work environment, I feel intimidated, they're going to at least pay some attention, and some places they won't. So I'm not saying always do that, but getting someone to help you look at it rationally and say, is this person actually have the power to make my life really miserable? Or am I just going to feel like someone picked on me a little bit? Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm in a group where someone go like kind of looking down on me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel embarrassed, but you don't actually have any power over it.
So as a step, an action step, what to do when you feel intimidated, look at it objectively and get some support professionally, or someone who can look at a situation and help you perceive the actual power differentials that might be there or not, and how miserable things could get based upon this person. And that is helpful for our primitive brain because it wants to know what's real, but it's going to initially perhaps overblow.
It's going to
try to protect you. So let's do some tapping just to acknowledge that. Even though my primitive brain wants to protect me.
Even though my primitive brain
and I think that's a really good idea.
And I think that's a really good idea.
I'm also open to seeing this objectively.
I'm also open to seeing this objectively.
Seeing the true power differential and threat.
Seeing the true power differential and threat.
Seeing how they treat other people.
Seeing how they treat other people.
Seeing where there's trust and where there really isn't.
Seeing where there's trust and where there really isn't.
So I can calibrate my body and not be intimidated.
So I can calibrate my body and not be intimidated.
I do not want to walk around intimidated.
I do not want to walk around intimidated.
And I actually don't have to.
And I actually don't have to.
Side of the eye. People may have a lot less power over me than I think.
People may have a lot less power over me than I think.
Part of my primitive brain remembers being bullied as a kid.
Part of my primitive brain remembers being bullied as a kid.
Punished for speaking out.
Punished for speaking out.
Ostracized for not being one of the cool kids.
Ostracized for not being one of the cool kids.
My primitive brain has stored all those experiences.
My primitive brain has stored all those experiences.
And I'm an adult now.
And I'm an adult now.
And I choose to see myself as an equal member of the circle of humanity.
And I choose to see myself as an equal member of humanity.
So I love the geometry of a circle because there isn't a dais that someone is up above. There's no podium that the presenter is behind. If you imagine that we're sitting on the floor even, it's a kind of a humble thing. And just imagine looking around and there are people in this circle. Right now, there are a bunch of people in this circle covering a lot of the planet. And we all get intimidated. Every single one of us has a primitive brain that gets intimidated. And it comes out in different ways. Just going back, the fawn, maybe moving away and running, becoming like trying to puff yourself up too. Right now, as you feel into your life, each of us, as we feel into our lives and where we get intimidated, which of those tend to be predominant? And I'd love to, with the time we have left, Kathy, maybe do some tapping on each one of those so that we touch on that. Is there something else that you wanted to make sure we fit in the next 15 minutes that we have?
And just we were talking about the steps. I think one, looking at it realistically, doing this kind of tapping where you can clear out the old energies and clarify, and then deciding, getting grounded and core to yourself. So I'd love to weave that into some of this tapping, because when someone intimidates me, I become very focused on their needs and their opinions.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily grounded in me. And that makes it a lot easier for someone to wash me into, like, if I'm not grounded in me, I'm really caring about your opinion, I am not as grounded and stable and confident. So I think if we can, as we tap on some of the feelings that come up, if we can weave in the, my opinion, my feelings actually matter.
Would you model that for us with one of those? Maybe
sure.
Start with fawn. Does that?
Great. Yeah. Karate chop. Even though I really want to fawn.
Even though I really want to fawn.
That feels so safe.
That feels so safe.
And I'm really good at it.
And I'm really good at it.
The problem is when I fawn.
The problem is when I fawn.
I'm really focused on them.
I'm really focused on them.
And I lose me.
And I lose me.
That does not feel good.
That does not feel good.
In fact, that makes me feel more insecure.
That makes me feel more insecure.
So I want to fawn more.
So I just need to fawn more.
So I lose myself more.
So I lose myself more.
This seems like a very bad cycle.
This seems like a really bad cycle.
What if I choose to breathe into my toes?
What if I choose to breathe into my toes right now?
And notice what I need.
And notice what I need. Yeah.
Top of the head. It's nice to pay attention to other people.
It is nice to pay attention to other people.
Eyebrow, but I don't want to lose me.
I do not want to lose me anymore.
Side of the eye. When I was little, it was important to really tune into other people.
When I was little, it was really important to tune into other people.
Under the eye, even to the point of losing myself.
Even to the point of losing myself.
Under the nose, and I reclaim me now.
And I reclaim me.
Chin, I refuse to lose myself again.
I refuse to lose myself again.
Collarbone, what I want matters.
What I want matters.
Yeah. And I can dance with other people.
And I can dance with other people.
Top of the head, I choose to stay in my own body.
I choose to stay in my own body.
I choose to know what I need.
And I choose to know what I need.
Even if I'm intimidated by
Even if I'm intimidated by someone.
Nice deep breath.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. I feel that in my body. Let's each of us take a moment and check in with your torso, with your throat. You know, that deferential fawning, if we let that go, we can still be of service. We can still follow a leader that we choose to, because that may be part of what's true for ourselves, is to be of generous service, but that comes from a very different place. So thank you, Kathy. I'm feeling drawn to do puff myself up.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though, if I'm really honest,
it's a
little uncomfortable to be that way right now.
It's a little uncomfortable to be that way now.
There are times when I start bragging.
There are times I start
Maybe
bragging.
even embellishing the truth.
Maybe even embellishing
Because
the
I
truth.
hate that feeling of being intimidated.
I really hate that feeling of being
I want to
intimidated.
get away from that feeling of being intimidated.
I want to get away from that feeling of being intimidated.
Isn't the right way to puff up my feathers?
The right way is to puff up my feathers.
Top of the head. A part of me wants to puff up if I can.
A part of me wants to puff up if I can.
Oh, I remember that time I did that.
Oh, I remember the time I did
Side of the
that.
eye. And it just didn't feel good to me.
It did not feel
Under
good
the
to
eye.
me.
It's better than putting myself down.
It's better than putting
Because
myself
I've done
down.
that too.
I have done that too.
Jen, what if I don't need to puff myself up?
What if I don't need to puff myself
How
up?
long? I do get intimidated.
I do get intimidated.
And I'm looking for healthier strategies.
I'm looking for healthier strategies.
And one of those is to really be clear about what's right for me.
One of them is to be really clear with what's right for me.
Top of the head. Stay centered in what's right for me.
Stay centered in what's right for me.
And give myself some choice.
And give myself some choice. Can I just add something to that? Eyebrow. I can be with the feelings of being smaller.
I can be with the feelings of being smaller.
Side of the eye. I can be with the feelings of being insecure.
I can be with the feelings of being insecure.
Under the eye. It's a natural part of being human, I think.
It is a natural part of being human.
Under the nose. But if I puff myself up like a pufferfish.
If I puff myself up like a pufferfish.
Chin, no one can get genuinely close to me.
No one can get genuinely close to me.
Collarbone, and if I shrink and hide away like an octopus.
And if I shrink and hide away like an octopus.
No one can get genuinely close to me.
No one can get genuinely close to me.
Top of the head. And I wonder if that's part of the underlying problem.
And I wonder if that's part of the underlying problem.
This fear of being genuinely
This fear of genuinely being close to people.
Nice, slow, deep breath.
Yeah.
I never do that.
No, and nobody does it to me too, you know, where they
No,
I have really close friends that are self-aware enough to know when they scurry away. And part of it is, I think the core of being internally referenced. I want to introduce just a couple of geeky terms here. Externally referenced is what we have to be as kids for our survival. We have to be paying attention to what the caregivers need and demand from us. And in school, we're taught to make that even bigger. You know, now we have people who are grading us that hold our future and our degree in their hands. Internally referenced is exactly what Kathy led us on. It's bringing ourselves back into what do I want? It doesn't mean that we're not aware of the status thing. We're not aware of what other people may want from us. But we don't allow that to take us away so that we're not clear on what's right for us. Internally referenced means I have a reference point inside myself for what I want in this situation. It may be that I want to run because I'm feeling less than. And that's where Kathy led us in. And it's okay to be in that insecurity. That's actually not a crime. That's really human. I can even stand here and just be in that. If you're internally referenced, then you can do that. And tapping, because we're paying attention to ourselves. Meditation, because we're paying attention inside of ourselves. These are things that help us to bring that awareness back where it belongs as an adult.
I think when we can release some of the shame, if I can stand here and say, I'm noticing I'm feeling insecure with you and I don't want to meet you as an equal, and I'm owning that feeling and not trying to make you make me better. I'm just like, this is what I'm feeling. Then by just saying that, I'm meeting you where I am and we are as equals versus me trying to be smaller. Oh, you're so wonderful, or you're intimidating me and kind of pushing you away, or look at me, I have a PhD and I'm better than you and pushing you
Right.
down. That means we're never, like, if we're trying to do this, we're never actually just saying, hey, this is me. I have things that are great and things that are, ouchy, and you probably do too. And I'm okay. I'm still centered in me and you're centered in you. And we're looking for a
Mm-hmm.
connection as equals, as humans that are flawed yet
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
And that's part of our passion for this work is we want people to be able to be internally referenced enough that they know what they want. Because when you're in conversation and connection with someone who is that, it's easier to share space. It's easier to recalibrate. It becomes not intimidation, but you can feel actually a different kind of power moving between you. It becomes a shared sort of resourcefulness. And I know that I didn't have this kind of feeling in a palpable way until I'd done a lot of emotional work, but we know that our community does. Imagine that you're with someone and you start relating to them, and you find out that, oh, Kathy, oh, she has a PhD, and oh my gosh, she's done so many things in her life, and here I am, dot dot dot. Now you notice that feeling, and you're internally referenced enough to know, oh, I've got some insecurity coming up. It's okay. I'm human. And instead of being intimidated, you start realizing that she's not actually expressing any of that power over you. She's drawing from you. What are your what are your resources? And
Yeah.
that's where when you're in a relationship where intimidation quiets down. And again, I think that it's a really natural thing for us to have. It's sort of like
Mm-hmm.
carbon dioxide coming out of our noses. It's it's something that's present. The dance of what to do with that may be to feel for the resourcefulness inside of yourself, to be present with what you're feeling, is also the things that externally you have access to, the life experiences, the devotions, the passions that you do have some
Mm-hmm.
ways of managing your own emotions, feeling for the resourcefulness in another person as a member of an ecosystem, your community, and starting to feel that way. Because people, we want to relate to your resourcefulness and your powers, and to help you and us amplify that. It's a time in our world where artistry and the capacity to meet in resourcefulness is so precious. When it happens, it's so precious, and things happen that are beautiful and nourishing and inviting when they do.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things, as since I've been doing all this work, I've been, as a sex educator, I do a lot of work on intimacy and sexuality. And in that community, I'm certainly not the top dog, but I've grown a lot over the years. And I remember when I started, I would look up at the people that had a lot more experience and popularity, and like, I want to be just like them. And it's as I've grown, I've realized that I projected all these wonderful things on those people up there. They knew what was going on. They were always confident it wasn't hard, and from where I am, I'm like, huh, I don't perceive myself as having all this privilege and all this ease, but I know that there's people that are probably looking at me going, wow, I wonder how she got there. It's so cool that she has all, she knows all these people. And I'm like, still not knowing everybody. And still, I think we always look up and we tend to project this power and this wonder on people that maybe just like going, huh, I feel pretty lost, but I'm doing the best I can. I'm still figuring this out. And I think that we create stories about people and positions that, as I've gotten to know my bosses better over the years, I always used to think, oh, they're my boss. They have all this power. And a lot of times they're like, I'm not really sure what the best thing is to do here. Let's try this. And so a lot of times what we think of as this, this more power is just being exactly feeling a lot of the same things everybody feels, and, figuring out our way forward.
Thank you. Appreciate your walk in the world. Having witnessed you go through this development and the ways that you teach about intimacy and showing up with your real self, your authentic self. Kathy has so many different videos out on her YouTube channel, and you can find them through theintimacydojo.com. And it's really exciting to me to watch people come into their realizations that we're all, as animals, we're very aware of status. To me, there is that call to relate in a different way. It is true that there are people that I meet that are interested in expressing their power over me. I make those interactions as minimal as I can and civil as I
Like
can.
you're not a good fit. Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's a thing, and we're going to be done with this thing as quickly as I can. The people,
I don't like that particular dance. I'm not going to dance it.
Right. Yeah. It's not the way that I orient. I orient as a co-creator rather than a lead, and also I love people that look at a co-creative energy. So one of the things that you can look at out in the world that helps my primitive brain is, who are the co-creators? Start noticing where people share space, share voice, share resource from a place of generous resourcefulness, that they enjoy that actually turns them on, that they get excited about co-creators showing up. You don't have to be as educated or experienced. It's an attitude of, oh, I would like to co-create. I have this little slice of resource, and I think that it fits in the ecosystem that we have. That's beautiful, and that takes a lot of the status limitations out of what I would love to see co-created. So thank you for modeling that with me too. I so appreciate that we get to share this space, share the screen, share the communities that we have. It's really precious to me.
We have a testimonial on Thriving Now where someone said, you listen to Kathy and Rick and you try to figure out who's in charge or who's leading, and you can't because they're dancing together. And I love that one, because we really are. It's a co-create. It's like I love that I can meet you as an equal and that you're willing to be open and vulnerable with me and just meet me there. And that's one of the best, most beautiful gifts anyone can give you. And if you're feeling intimidated, again, it's very hard to meet someone as an equal. Yeah. So we encourage you, get support. Rick has now gliding scale sessions. He's so super generous on that. If you want some support, please, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of coaches and therapists over the years, and he is by far the most intuitive, gentle. He just blessed my life by helping me through so many things. So if that's something you're interested in, jump on those gliding scale sessions and work with him on that. But get a realistic view. It's very hard for us to do that when our primitive brain is panicking. Having someone else kind of say, okay, what is really happening? Is this person have power to make a difference in your world? And guide you through that is really good. And then doing some tapping on the actual feelings coming up, because for me, at least 90% of them are probably from the past. And if I can clear them out and I can look at the person without all that other noise bubbling up, I can just be like, this is a lot easier to handle. If I can get rid of 90% that isn't about now and deal with the 10% that is, that's going to make a huge difference. And then being in myself as much as I can. Someone asked a question of, what do I do if someone intentionally tries to intimidate me? Same 3 steps apply. Realistically, what power is there? What's the actual relationship? What can they actually do? Clear out as many emotions, tap on the feelings, be with them as you can. Support is really helpful. And then, okay, I'm going to be with myself. I'm going to choose how I dance. And it might mean sometimes changing a job or going to HR. It might mean ending a relationship at times. And I think that most of the time, if we start standing in ourselves and not reacting the same way, they're not getting the same treats when they push those buttons. And some people will stop and some people will escalate. And those people, we need to get help. Like we need to go to HR or the police or whatever we need, because there are people that will do that. Very small percentage, but we want you to be safe. And if you realistically think you're in danger, please get support from whatever professional you need to.
Thank you all.
So
Our inbox is open to you. support@thrivingnow.com comes to both Kathy and I. And we're the ones that read and reply to those. And so, yeah, until next time, we'd love to hear what you took from this, specific things that we didn't cover that you'd like us to talk about in a revisit of this. Whatever is right for you to share. It's an important part of our ecosystem is to hear from you. So thank you.
And I think one part of being less intimidated is to appreciate yourself, because then you're like, oh, I did good. You rocked by being here. Tough subject. You tapped along with us. You're making a difference. Like, this changes your trajectory. Give yourself pats on the back and know that you're an amazing person.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. Thank you, Kathy.
Good night. Good night.